Raymond was possibly losing his mind. What else could explain the fact that he kept thinking about his best friend in a not-so-sisterly way? Tried as he could to shake her off his mind, he couldn't, and what happened a few nights ago made it near impossible to do so. He'd even resorted to sleeping at the hospital to avoid seeing Wynne. Wynne had been his best friend since they were kids, and Raymond could confidently say that they were close and told each other everything. He told her about the women he hooked up with. She told him about the men she fell in love with every week. That had been normal for them, but Raymond had a sinking feeling inside him that this time she was serious about being in love, and it didn't make him feel good. Raymond was struggling. He couldn't stop thinking about Wynne. When he closed his eyes, all he could see was the kiss. It was driving him crazy, and he knew he had to do something about it before it affected his work.
"Mr. Raymond, you may go in,"
the receptionist said, bringing him back to reality. His only choice now was to talk to someone about it, but he couldn't very well share it with his Wynne, could he? So he decided to book an earlier appointment with his therapist.
Raymond, good morning. It's good to see you. Our next appointment wasn't supposed to be until next week, so something must have happened.
Dr. Theresa greeted him with a warm smile.
Yeah.
Can you fill me in?
While reclining on the couch with his eyes shut, thoughts of Wynne filled his mind. Without opening his eyes, he said,
She kissed me. Wynne, my best friend.
Dr. Theresa responded with contemplative sounds as she jotted something down in her notebook. She then returned her gaze to Raymond and inquired,
And how did that make you feel?
With his eyes still shut, Raymond sat up and shared.
She was drunk when it happened. The next day, she didn't remember, but it's been all I can think of.
Dr. Theresa emitted another thoughtful hum.
So, if I understand correctly, Wynne, your best friend kissed you and you haven't been able to get the thought of it off your mind?
Raymond sighed in frustration, finally opening his eyes.
Yes.
And how has this impacted your work? Has it affected your ability to focus on your work?
Raymond remained silent.
Raymond, I need to know.
He shook his head and admitted,
I can push her to the back of my mind while I'm working, but when I'm idle, she dominates my thoughts.
Dr. Theresa jotted down notes and asked further,
And how does this make you feel?
That's why I'm here.
Raymond, may I be honest with you?
Dr. Theresa set her notebook aside, focusing entirely on Raymond.
Correct me if I'm mistaken, but in all the years I've been your therapist, you've rarely discussed Wynne in this way. Our conversations have revolved around your addiction, your career, but Wynne has come up only in passing. Did something happen between you two?
About 2 hours later, Raymond returned home to find that Wynne was absent. At the end of the session, Dr. Theresa had said something that shocked him.
Raymond, we don't have enough time to talk about this today, but I think concerning Wynne, these feelings may have come up because you feel your relationship is being threatened or because you're in love with her.
Scrubbing his face with his hand, Raymond pushed his hair out of his face and groaned. In love with Wynne? Not possible. They'd been friends for years and this had never happened before. Or was Dr. Theresa right, and it was because he felt their relationship was being threatened? The only person he could think of was,
Wynne, are you free right now? Can you come over?
Jerry came over to Wynne's desk. Today, the older man was donning a purple suit. Wynne had quickly realized that Jerry loved his suits, and he probably had a million of them. He wore a different color every day and she had never seen him repeat a suit. Was this normal for rich people?
Wynne.
The professional smile was back on Jerry's face.
I have good news.
He handed her a file, which she began to go through.
Remember the proposal you gave me the first time we met?
Winnie didn't want to get her hopes up, but if this were true, then Jerry confirmed her thoughts.
We have been given the go-ahead to begin filming.
The file slipped from Wynn's hand and landed on the desk. With wide eyes, she glanced to the side, where Anna gave her a thumbs up.
Thank you.
She mouthed to her friend, and then turned her attention back to Jerry.
Wow, Jerry. Thank you so much.
No need for that. Anyway, Caspian, that is, Mr. Leroy has asked that you go to the filming site with Olivia.
Wynne shuddered as she turned toward Olivia, and as expected, the other woman was glaring at her. Giving Olivia a nervous smile, she quickly looked away.
Forget about her, Wynne. You worked for this, and you deserve to witness this.
Wynne gave herself a pep talk and refocused on Jerry.
Thank you so much, Jerry.
As Raymond's phone rang loudly, shattering the silence around him, he reached into his pocket to take it out. and glanced at the caller ID. Talk about perfect timing.
Hey, Win,
I got it. Leroy Company.
can you stop obsessing over him?
There was anger in Raymond's voice.
Caspian is in a relationship, Win, so just let it go.
With that, he hung up, leaving Wynne staring at her phone in disbelief. What just happened? She didn't have time to ponder over it because Anne walked into the restroom at that moment.
Winnie, you need to get out there. I think Olivia is planning to leave without you.
Thanks, Anna.
She said and exited the restroom. Sure enough, Olivia was nowhere to be seen. Wynne quickly hurried down to the parking lot where she found Olivia about to drive off in her car. She waved at her, and luckily, Olivia didn't run her down even though it seemed like she wanted to.
I'm sorry. I had to go to the restroom.
Wynne apologized as she got into the car. Olivia pressed the lock on the doors, not even sparing her a glance. As she buckled her seatbelt, Wynne found out the hard way that Olivia was a reckless driver, and on numerous occasions during the ride, she had to hold on to the grab handle. If she didn't know any better, she would think Olivia was trying to kill her, but the other woman didn't spare her a glance the entire ride. When they finally reached the filming site without any scratches, thank goodness, Olivia proceeded to ignore her. When Wynne asked what she could do, Olivia just waved her off.
The model is on her way. She called to apologize and said there's a bit of traffic.
The director called out, waving her phone in the air. Then, she resumed her conversation with the producer. Olivia stood next to them, listening in on their conversation. Since Wynne didn't have anything specific to do, she went around checking on the props, the filming crew, and everything else. A few minutes later, the model arrived and Olivia rushed to meet her, asking about her drive down there. Gazelle, who was modeling the diamonds, gave monosyllabic replies and looked around. She had a few questions of her own.
Did you check the clothes for dust? I can't wear them if they have even a speck of dust.
Olivia looked confused.
What are you talking about?
Looking unimpressed, Gazelle said,
The clothes and the diamonds. Make sure none of them have dust on them.
But we have to start filming now.
Olivia spluttered. She hadn't been informed she was going to be dealing with a diva.
I won't wear them then.
Gazelle wore a defiant look as she stared back at Olivia. Wynne, overhearing their conversation, rushed over.
What just happened?
She asked aloud, only then noticing that Olivia was standing there, fuming.
Miss Gazelle, I've informed the stylist about your allergy. Everything will be cross-checked beforehand.
Wynne might have done a bit of research on Giselle when the news came out about her and Caspian, discovering that Giselle had a dust allergy. Turning to face Wynne, Giselle asked,
What's your name?
Wynne.
You'll be my assistant for the duration of filming.
Gazelle walked off before Wynne could react, leaving her in shock. Just as they were about to start filming, Caspian arrived at the site. He engaged in a brief conversation with the director and producer before making his way over to Olivia and Wynne, who were standing beside Giselle, who was having her makeup done.
The lighting has to be absolutely perfect.
Gazelle said to Wynne.
And remember, my left side is more photogenic than my right.
Her intense gaze met Wynne's, as if this were a matter of life and death.
I'll let the photographer and videographer know.
Wynne replied, turning around as Caspian approached them.
Mr. Leroy.
Upon spotting him, Gazelle rose from her seat and enveloped Caspian in a warm hug.
Caspian, you've arrived.
Wynne averted her gaze, and Olivia acknowledged him with a nod before subtly signaling to Wynne to follow her.
We should give them a bit of privacy.
Olivia suggested, leading the way.
Sure.
Wynne replied, following Olivia. Unable to resist, she stole a glance back at them. Giselle's hand rested on Caspian's shoulder, and she laughed at something he had said. Wynne rolled her eyes. She was willing to bet that whatever he said hadn't been that funny. Wynne, lost in her thoughts and not watching her steps, bumped into Olivia.
Watch where you're going.
Olivia shot her a glare.
Sorry, Olivia.
She apologized, offering a meek smile. With one final backward glance, she followed Olivia to the clothing stand, where attendants were meticulously sorting out the wardrobe for the shoot.
She's going to wear this first.
The stylist pointed to a black slip dress.
Then for the next scene, she'll wear this and this.
She indicated a low-rise jeans and a gray tank top.
For the last scene, she'll wear this.
She pointed at a full-coverage, high-waisted white swimsuit. Olivia looked at Wynne and said,
You're her temporary assistant, so take note of them.
Was that spite Wynne detected in Olivia's voice? Probably,
All right, Olivia.
she said aloud, but in her head.
You should have done your homework.
She wasn't going to give her any more reason to criticize her.
Giselle, we're ready to start.
The stylist and her assistant ushered Giselle into the dressing room, helping her into the first outfit. Wynne took this opportunity to approach Caspian, who stood beside the director.
Thank you, sir.
He shot her a confused look.
But what for?
For allowing me to be here.
He didn't say anything at first.
It's nothing.
He waved her off and began walking to check on the cameraman.
How is it going?
We just have to set up the 3-point lighting, and we'll be ready to go.
Caspian gave a brisk nod and was about to move on to check on something else when one of the cameramen slipped and accidentally dislodged the lighting equipment. Wynne didn't know how she moved so fast. The only thing on her mind was to prevent Caspian from getting hurt. After all, he had saved her twice, and she wanted to return the favor. What followed wasn't like the day of her accident. This time, before slipping into the darkness, she heard someone screaming her name. Raymond rushed back to the hospital after receiving an emergency call.
Where's Dr. Sam? I need to see him about the patient who needs a lung transplant.
I think he's with a patient who came in with a concussion.
The nurse directed him to the room.
A deluxe private room for a patient with a concussion?
Raymond sought confirmation. It wasn't every day he saw that.
The guardian of one Wynne quested for it.
The nurse responded.
Yes, yes.
The nurse nodded, but Raymond was already striding in the direction of the room. When he arrived and looked inside, sure enough, there was Wynne, lying on the bed. However, something else caught his eye. A movement, and there he saw Caspian Leroy.
If Caspian is here, then Wynne must not need me.
He concluded, and quietly walked away. When Wynne slowly opened her eyes, she found herself lying in a hospital bed, and an eerie sense of déjà vu washed over her. It had only been weeks since she'd been in a similar situation, though that time had been much worse.
You're awake.
As her vision cleared, she saw a doctor standing before her. Just like her last time at a hospital, this doctor, a man, aimed a small flashlight into her eyes and asked,
How do you feel?
Wynne deadpanned, her dry sense of humor kicking in.
I have a headache, but at least I didn't get run over by a car this time.
She almost laughed as she watched the doctor's face contort with confusion.
Oh, I was in an accident before. Got hit by a car. It doesn't hurt like the last time.
The doctor laughed in response.
It's not your first rodeo, then.
Unfortunately not.
Wynne replied with a faint smile. Her head throbbed, but it was a bearable kind of pain.
I'm Dr. Samuel, but everybody calls me Sam. Do you remember your name and what happened?
Fortunately, she did.
My name is Wynne, and I got in an accident trying to save my boss.
Sam chuckled and turned to address someone out of Wynne's view.
Did you hear that? She's fine. She can stay in the hospital or choose to go home as long as she gets some rest.
Turning back to Wynne, he added with a wink,
I'll be back to check on you later, Wynne.
Before leaving the room, finally, the other person in the room came into view, Caspian.
Are you okay?
The doctor just answered that.
His expression remained serious as he said,
I want to hear it from you.
Yes, Mr. Leroy. I'm fine.
Why did you do that?
Do what?
Wynne responded, a hint of irritation in her voice. Caspian looked unimpressed.
You jumped in the way. You could have gotten hurt, or did you do that with ulterior motives?
Wynne couldn't help but roll her eyes this time. He was so full of himself.
It was a reflex. I saw that the lighting kit was about to fall on you and jumped in the way.
She groaned, realizing how it sounded as she said it.
You know what? Now that I think about it, it sounds really dumb. Why did I do that?
Miss Wynne, I don't know what you're playing at. That night at the pub might have been a coincidence, but then you show up at my place of work, get a job there, and now you saved me.
The way he emphasized saves didn't escape Wynne's notice.
That that night at the pub, you knew my name. I didn't pay any mind because a lot of people, I don't know my name, but now it's all very suspicious, don't you think?
If this weren't such a serious matter, Winnie might have burst out laughing, but the expression on Caspian's face made it clear he was dead serious. He was nuts.
Mr. Leroy, no, Caspian.
Wynne met his gaze with determination.
You're implying that I'm stalking you.
She had to admit, she kind of was at first, but how dare he suggest it?
And that I would go as far as risking my life to save you. Get off your high horse, Caspian. I would have done it even if it had been anyone else.
Caspian stared back at her, his gaze unwavering.
You have to get the left side of my face. It's more photogenic than my right.
Gazelle, the photographer and videographer, will capture you from both sides, and then we'll choose the best shots.
Following the minor accident that had occurred, filming had been temporarily halted for an hour. However, upon resuming, Giselle and the director hadn't managed to reach an agreement.
Then I won't do it.
Giselle declared firmly. The director, visibly frazzled, ran a hand through her hair and turned to Giselle's manager, Sarah.
Talk to her and resolve this, please.
She requested before exiting the room.
Giselle, you heard the director. They'll capture you from both sides and select the best shots in the end.
No.
Giselle responded, crossing her arms and standing up.
Don't act impulsively. This is an opportunity you can't afford to mess up.
Is it so difficult for her to capture my good side?
Giselle whined, unwilling to compromise.
Giselle.
Sarah massaged her forehead, feeling a headache coming on.
Please be reasonable. If you act up, they might decide to call off the contract. Do I have to remind you how much this will help your career?
Don't tell me what to do.
Unable to direct her anger at anyone else, Giselle turned to the table where the jewelry for the shoot was arranged and ran her hand through it, sending the contents scattering in various directions. Unknown to her, one of the necklaces fell into her bag.